This is VSiN By The Books on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We begin hour number 2. It is VSiN By The Books. I'm Dave Ross here in downtown Las Vegas at Circus Sports. He is our closer, Jensen Lewis, back home in Cleveland, Ohio. You've got a busy weekend. Did you get all your travel booked before the end of the show?
Pending confirmation emails, right, through the booking agents here. But, yeah, I'll be in Coral Gables for the NC State-Miami Game 2, pivotal ACC college baseball series. I know we've been highlighting some of the futures. We have got 3 weeks left of the regular season, my friend, and then we are into conference tournaments and then ultimately into the regionals. So a lot of jockeying, to use a Derby term, a lot of jockeying for position amongst these conference standings, but a big tilt down at Alex Rodriguez Field there tomorrow.
I'll be flying home to Virginia Beach tomorrow. Cannot wait. And the boys right now are deciding who's picking me up at the airport. That's always fun. It's kind of like moving, Jensen. It's like, all right, who's going to get him in Norfolk to drive him all the way to Virginia Beach? So you guys figure that out amongst yourselves. So I'll be there about 3:30 Eastern time. Cannot wait for that. It's going to be a lot of fun getting home for the week, see mom and dad and family and friends as well. But for hour number 2, we begin with our highlights and headlines.
Help your bottom line with today's highlights and headlines.
And we enjoyed our conversation in the last hour there to wrap it up with Thomas Gable there at the Borgata, talking a lot about the Kentucky Derby. And we did mention that Bob Baffert, 2 horses in the Derby. Now he's just got 1 horse. Rodriguez was scratched from the running of the 151st Kentucky Derby tomorrow with a small foot bruise. So according to the managing partner, Tom Rand, they are resting their plans and resetting those towards the Preakness. So you're not going to see Rodriguez tomorrow in the Derby. You might see him there in Charm City there for the Preakness. But, you know, it is interesting that Thomas made the point that with his absence now, that does get Baeza into the field. So all those horses are going to move up a slot, and Baeza is going to get there. And it did intrigue me a little bit when you heard Thomas mention that Baeza has pushed journalism out in California. So a lot of people that may be a little bit novice here in the horse game, I'm sure their attention is up now that Baeza is in the field and Rodriguez is not. What do you make of that scenario, and that maybe a new horse here late, 48 hours before the running, hops in that maybe we weren't handicapping for the weeks leading up to it?
Oh, I think it's something to definitely consider, and that's why I think yesterday, just in our conversation there with Ken, that he kind of made mention of it. He said you have up till 9 a.m. to be able to scratch your horse, and then those horses that did not accrue enough points, kind of your next man up, if you will, next horse up. Some of them have been really influential, and also, as we just talked with TG Thomas Gable about, for exotics bettors, and you're looking to potentially key journalism, the big favorite here that should win, and then kind of fill in behind that. When you hear about it and you see the statistics that this horse is absolutely run with the favorite, that also affects how you want to position perhaps exactas, maybe more so in trifectas and superfectas there. So will definitely influence the exotic betting, no question about it.
And again, journalism was 3-1 yesterday, 5-2 today. So those odds lengthening a little bit more on the favorite journalism from everybody that we've talked to this week. And certainly, again, if you're not a VSiN Pro subscriber, check it out, because we're breaking down that Derby pillar to post here. It does feel like the rightful favorite. Doesn't mean he's going to get across the line, but it does feel like the numbers are supportive. That journalism right now, 5-2 favorite before we go off in the Derby tomorrow. We had a fun wager that we placed here at Circa, and that was for best record in the month of May. We're going to talk a lot more baseball here in the next segment in our Daily Diamond. But, Jensen, we get off on the good foot. So the Reds with an 8-1 win, 9-1 win yesterday, rocking chair winner there for Cincinnati to get that done after being swept on the last day of April in a double dip against St. Louis. All that doesn't even matter to us here going forward in May. 1-0 in May. I kind of was joking. You can't win it on May 1st, but you can lose it. You can't really lose it either. But we got to feel good at least. You got to get off to some sort of winning streak. And I was looking at this yesterday in there, obviously, before we made the handicap of why we played the Reds. I think you do have to look at 20 wins, right? If you're really realistically trying to wrap up a best record in a certain month, I do think you have to look at it in that context, right? You're looking for a team that can win 20 days in a month.
And also remember, and this is, boy, we're getting into summer months now where precipitation is going to play a little havoc, and you kind of got a little window into it, speaking of the Reds, where you have that doubleheader before we get into the month of May. So off days will be fewer and farther between this month. Also remember that you'll have uneven amounts of games played in certain team structures there for their schedules. So always something to factor in before you place those. But we'll be tracking them. We'll be updating them each week. And for those people riding with us, excited to see it. The 3 plays that I had given out, Mets 14-1, Mariners were off yesterday, upwards of 29-1 at Cirque, and then of course our Reds about 68.5-1. Just win and move on, baby. Hunter Green going for it tonight at home against Mitchell. But Mitchell Parker's been pretty good, by the way, for the Nats. So a lower total there in that game, but the Reds minus $1.70 favorite there to have Hunter Green on the mound tonight.
And I talked about the Phillies here on the network. Didn't end up playing the Phillies because the number. Remember, did the handicaps before we knew what the numbers would be. And I just didn't feel like playing plus a 10-50, 10-1 shot on the Phillies. So I rode with you in the Reds at 68-1 and then added the Royals. That was my other play here. I got them at plus 42.50. They get a nice win and sweep Tampa Bay. Now, the sweep doesn't really help me, but the last one does. And they're going to begin a series today in Charm City. So the Royals, small dogs there. Michael Walker, is going to be on the bump here. Kansas City plus $1.15. So we'll have a lot of fun throughout the month charting our 5 teams that we have in the mix here. Jensen with his 3 and my 2 that we have going forward. So much more baseball to get to as well. But we did mention you've got a play that's in pocket tonight in the NBA playoffs, and that is Golden State can close out Houston tonight. And Jensen, I think you think that might be happening.
I do think that the Rockets keep it close. That'd be the lean for me, plus 5 right now. And I do wonder just kind of where the urgency is here for the Warriors, knowing that you did rest your starters. And is it one of those kind of a prize fight, right? You want to hit them in the mouth and see if they can get back up off the map. But I do think that will factor in the rest there from Steve Kerr, sitting his guys, even with the comeback there into the later stages of that fourth quarter. And then also the Rockets, conversely, Dave, they played their starters 30-plus minutes.
Right.
And so does that factor in here in a close game on the road? I think Steve Kerr may be saying, okay, I'd rather give a little bit here and get a lot more at home. But I do think the Rockets can keep it close tonight. And
one other play that you've already got in pocket, you're going to roll with the Blue Note to force a Game 7 against Winnipeg. I feel like if I've been lucky on these puck lines, even into the final second of some of these games. Let's go with it. The more also a play here, Dave. Connor Hellebuck has not proven it to me just yet that you can go on the road and you can put up a 60-minute effort here. So a 60-minute effort and maybe even further if they got to go into OT. But I do think this ends in regulation. I do think it's a multiple goal win here for St. Louis, and we get that Game 7 here in a couple of days. Hour number 3. Lou Finicaro, we love catching up with Lou. Really interesting fight night. Corey Sandhagen's going to be the main event against Davison Figueiredo. He's a massive favorite. It's gone up to about $550 in the marketplace. We'll talk with Lou about that and the card. You get some interesting names on it. The Little Heathen, Jeremy Stevens, is back on this card. Misha Tate, a former champion back in the day. Back in, 2016 she was the champ. Here we are almost a decade later. She's on this fight card as a small favorite as well. So we'll get all of Lou's leans here for that UFC fight night. And JD, Jonathan Davis, is going to join us in hour number 3 as well, breaking down the wild night on ice that we saw last night, what we might see tonight with that St. Louis and Winnipeg game, and certainly a Game 7 tomorrow between Colorado and Dallas. But John Condit is going to join us later on this hour as well. Who's John Condit? He's an Ohio sports reporter, and he happened to get one of the final interviews with Pete Rose. So we're going to have some sound from Pete before his passing that has never been heard before. And you're going to hear it for the first time with us here on VSiN By The Books today. And in specifics, John was able to talk to Pete about basically what got him banned from baseball. And now, with what we do, Jensen, and what's done all across the country, the influx of sports betting and kind of that marriage with sports. You see it in the NFL. You certainly see it with the NHL and NBA and Major League Baseball to a degree. That'll be fascinating to hear Pete from his own words about today's day and age versus what he went through in the 80s and 90s. And look, I'm not here to say, Jensen, that it excuses everything for what happened in real time for Bart Giamatti and Pete Rose, but it is kind of startling when you look at where the country is now versus where it was then.
It really, an era gone by, right? And again, it still doesn't take away from the actual physical ability and what he did on the field, which will never be equaled as far as the most hits ever in our great games. So, yeah, very anxious for this conversation and to hear some of the insights never heard before, and just ultimately one of the polarizing figures in our sports history, but a man so beloved in Cincinnati and the Queen City.
Fascinating. Cannot wait for that conversation. I was curious, did you ever get to meet Pete before his passing, Jensen, by any chance?
One quick time, and as you know how Pete is, the dress, the flair, it was all there. He is one of the great characters ever to walk this earth.
Do not miss that conversation coming up this hour here with John Condit right here in studio. If you've not checked out Edge Boost, it's the first ever bank account that's built just for bettors. It ensures all of your gambling transactions are always approved. No usage fees, no minimums. Earn cashback rewards, 100% approval for all your betting deposits. Sign up today at edgeboost.bet. Use the promo code BOOK, the name of this show. Deposit $25. Edge Boost going to match that deposit. That's edgeboost.bet. We are back with our daily dose of the Daily Diamond.
VSiN By The Books, right here on VSiN.
We continue the Friday edition VSiN By The Books. Dave Ross, Jensen Lewis here. And again, a lot to get to. We're going to have Lou Finicaro, JD, Jonathan Davis join us in hour number 3. John Condit's going to join us here coming up in the next segment with an exclusive look and listen from Pete Rose in his own words about gambling in the modern day era here in sports. So all of that to get to. But of course, we do it every single day. It's time for the Daily Diamond. Every time I see it, Jensen, all I can hear in my head is A Few Good Men. All rise as Jack walks in for that beautiful soliloquy with Tom Cruise at the end. What do you have for the man that we know exactly who it's synonymous with in baseball?
Indeed. All rise. Aaron Judge, this is as historic a start, I think, as we've seen in recent memory. And by the way, we're just a couple of years removed from him having one of the all-time, if not the all-time single-season offensive performance in Major League Baseball history. Here's what he's done at home. 444, 7 homers, 17 RBI, and 15 home games. He's currently minus 650. Dave, we are May 2nd.
Come on.
He's minus 650 to win the American League Most Valuable Player. And for good measure, what he's done. Also, Max Fried getting the ball tonight against Tampa Bay. 3 career starts against the Rays. How about a .42 ERA? 9 hits allowed in 21 and third innings. So very straightforward here. Aaron Judge, 2 or more hits, runs, RBI. Max Fried under hits allowed. Book it.
Okay. You cannot, America, you cannot bet Aaron Judge at minus 650, okay? You can't. Not saying you wouldn't win. I'm saying you can't bet it because you know what happens, Jensen. All of a sudden you get a hammy and you're out for a couple weeks, and all of a sudden, where's this number going to go? This is ridiculous to me. But here's the crazier thing about that. Bobby Witt Jr., 8-1. You want to play it? That's fine. Why is Mike Trout 35-1?
He's the third betting choice, too, and he's hurt.
What is happening in this market? What are we 35-1 from Mike Trout? That's
May
more
2nd.
insane. That's more insane than playing Judge at minus 650.
Totally agree.
Okay, I'm going to settle down now. That is, I was like, this got to be a misprint. This can't be right. No, it's right. They're asking you to lay 650 on Aaron Judge. Got it. Mike Trout 35-1. I just don't see it. What do you see today here with the Nationals and the Reds?
All right, the grass is greener, and we just touched on Hunter Green, who will start for our Redlegs in Great American Ballpark tonight. 3 home starts thus far, .142 ERA, 24 strikeouts in 19 innings pitched. Remember, I told you guys, if you're just joining us, Mitchell Parker's been really good for the Nationals so far this season. And so, I didn't know if I wanted to go a play against the Nats started there. So I went more with a first 5 money line, also knowing that Hunter Green has been his dominant self there. So I think it's more a play to me. Outs recorded, I think he can go deeper in the game. Nats offense has been a path of least resistance here and there outside of the top of the lineup. So those would be the 2 leans for me. Hunter Green over on the outs recorded and the Reds first 5 money line.
Okay. And again, we're not trying to get ahead of ourselves. Like, you can't play all the games today. But when we look at our big future ticket on the Reds for best record in the month of May, this is kind of one of those series, Jensen, where you get home, you stay at home because you played St. Louis to begin the month here. This is one of those that I kind of earmarked and went, I mean, obviously we're looking for a sweep, right? I mean, I know it's hard to get that. It's hard to beat any team 3 days in a row. But yes, you want to win series, but to cash that ultimate ticket that we talked about in the last segment, you're looking at 20 wins. This is the type of series that you'd love to get off on that good foot with. And again, $1.70 betting favorite today with Hunter Green on the mound. These are kind of those must games for us if we're really going to have visions of grandeur of cashing that ticket later.
Yeah, and also just that these are series you have to win from a postseason perspective, right? We talk about all the time series in April and May count the same as they do in August, September. Don't give away opportunities in which you can take advantage, especially with the way that the Reds' rotation is going at this point. The bullpen for the Nationals has been a huge Achilles heel. So again, if it's not early in that one, great live betting opportunity. If this one is tight into the later innings, because Nats bullpen has been bad. Reds bullpen has been but listen, that's a great opportunity if you want to jump in a live spot.
It does feel like the Reds are starting to figure out that bullpen a little bit more so than certainly the boys in D.C. So I'm with you on that, and certainly Hunter Green is going to be on that short list for Cy Young, that's for sure. Dodgers, Braves in the ATL. Boy, you kind of look at the Braves, and they're starting to make their inroads a little bit here, but the Dodgers are still the Dodgers. What do you have today?
All right, so it's Teo-rising. So instead of terrorizing, it is Teoscar Hernandez who has terrorized opposing pitching staffs. Remember that the first series, or first homestand, I should say, for the Dodgers, it was where Atlanta could not score, could not win.
Right.
This was just as dismal a start for the Bravos. They've gotten their act together here. But the Dodgers coming in winners, I believe, of 5 in a row. Teo's been on a 9-game hit streak headed into tonight, 425, 6 doubles, 4 homers, 15 RBI, and Yoshi Yamamoto. You talk about Cy Young, right there towards the top in the National League picture, a .50 ERA in 3 road starts with a 177 average allowed. So take Teo for 2 or more total bases. I do like Yoshi under the hits allowed. Now, this one you could have a little trepidation with because the Braves offense is starting to put things together. But Yamamoto's dominance away from Chavez Ravine cannot be denied here. So those would be 2 leans for me.
By the way, just looking at the futures numbers here very quickly for the Braves, boy, they've been shorted. Mets are still odds on, but that's come down too, minus $1.25. Phillies right back to kind of close to where they were, plus 230. Braves are down to plus 330. Nats, Marlins, forget about it. Plus 330. Is there any interest in that for the Braves?
I think you still have to. I think it's still a consideration, just knowing that they're only going to get healthier with Acuna, with Strider. Alex Anthopoulos, one of the great deadline GMs too. If you remember, just a handful of years ago, basically went out and traded for an entirely new outfield, I should say. Braves went on to win the World Series. That was also the year they did not have Ronald Acuna Jr. Because of the season-ending injury. So if any team can do it, they know how to run the marathon. So absolutely actionable spots for the Braves.
I got to think if you're a Boston fan, you're like, man, I'm really glad we went out and got Alex Bregman. What do you see today with the Twins and the Red Sox?
He has been unbelievably hot, and the headline is Bregman keeps bashing. They get to go back home after being north of the border. Tough one to lose against Toronto. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., go-ahead 3-run homer. But offensively, remember we said the guy with the better OPS than Bregman in Fenway Park history, guy by the name of Ted Williams, and then it's Bregman. Well, what he's done at home and at least headed back to it, he's excited to get back there. How about a 444 average on his current 5-game home hit streak, 3 doubles and a homer? Boston's averaged almost 5.5 runs per game just in this past homestand. Now, they do get a tough customer in Joe Ryan, who will take the ball for the Minnesota Twins tonight. Twins looked just dreadful, as I know our producer Brandon Valesky can attest to, against a lowly Cleveland Guardian offense. But hey, this is going to be an intriguing matchup tonight. I still think Bregman stays hot. 2 or more hits, runs, RBI for him. And I'll even take a shot at the Red Sox team total over. I do have an official play in pocket for VSiN Pro subscribers. You guys have this. Red Sox Twins over 9. Good price too, minus $1.02. I do think we see offense. Perhaps if it is just Boston, they've been rolling at home. The Twins could, be able to get to it. It's not going to be Walker Buehler tonight. He did have to get some imaging done, perhaps an injury for him. So I do see runs from both sides tonight.
Talking about some demarcation here in the AL East. Yankees are still odds on at minus $1.30. Red Sox have drifted to plus 330. A couple losses there north of the border. Blue Jays plus 850. Orioles, who are in dead last right now, are plus 950. And then the Rays at 10-1. I did not expect a month into the season, Jensen, to see these type of numbers. Could you only play the Red Sox at plus 330, or do we really think the boys in Charm City can get their act together?
I'm not convinced on Baltimore until they do some things in the rotation, and it still might be a month or so before that happens. So I would not touch Baltimore right now until they prove it. Big series for them against the Royals, who have now all of a sudden found their hitting shoes a bit in Tampa. So, it's a more wait and see on the O's futures for me.
Yeah, I hope they don't find those hitting shoes, the Orioles. Let's keep those on Kansas City right now for somebody who's got a ticket on the Royals. So, right now, 6 games under for Baltimore. It's a little bit astounding when you look at that 12-18. Yankees right now leading that division at 18-13. If you have not checked out ProfitX, for you baseball bettors, you really should, because they're offering the best odds all baseball season long. ProfitX is a peer-to-peer sports exchange available in 40 or more states here across the United States, first of its kind here in the country. So you're going to be able to make your sports picks against other groups of fans rather than the books. That's going to guarantee you the best odds on average by 10 to 20%. You can even request your own odds. So download ProfitX today. Use the code VSiN, VSIN, earn up to $200 in ProfitX cash over your very first month. So again, check it out, ProfitX, and use that code VSiN. When we come back, this is going to be really, really interesting conversation. John Condit is going to join us in studio. One of the last conversations that Pete Rose ever had was with John. So we're going to hear some exclusive audio from Pete Rose about the state of gambling and certainly in the sports world. That is next here on VSiN By The Books.
You're tuned in to VSiN By The Books right here on VSiN.
We are back, VSiN By The Books on this Friday edition. Dave Ross and Jensen Lewis. I'm here at Circus Sports Fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Our closer back home in Cleveland, Ohio. Jensen, we've been talking about it all show. Really excited to have John Condit join us here in studio. Of course, Ohio sports reporter joins us here in Las Vegas. John, great to have you in town. And we, Jensen and I, were talking, whenever you talk about Pete Rose and the all-time hits leader in Major League Baseball, and certainly with his passing, and you were one of the last guys to talk to Pete before his passing last year. It is fascinating on many different levels. Can you tell the people what you're working on? And I know it's a documentary, and it also goes to Eric Schau, who gave up that historic hit to Pete Rose back in the 80s.
Yes, and this is really the first time I'm talking publicly about the film we're working on. So Eric Schau, God rest his soul, passed back in 1994, asked me as a friend to sneak him out of Riverfront Stadium the night before he gave up the hit to Pete Rose. And I'm working on a film about his life with a lot of the film in the middle about 4192, that exciting night, September 11th, 1985. And of course, the 40th anniversary is coming up this September.
John, it's remarkable too, as again, someone who was born and raised in Cleveland, but also I did my middle school and high school down at Cincinnati Anderson. And so, you grow up with it. I was born in '84. So obviously seeing, all of that and growing up and the Big Red Machine and obviously the World Series there in the '90s. What stands out to you the most as you were gathering kind of the details and being around it firsthand and really concocting the idea for this documentary?
Yeah, there was a great article written by Tom Friend in 2010 called The Tragic Life of Eric Schau. And I remember reading that. And I thought, you know what? This story needs to be told someday. And that's where it was born. It's an incredible article. You can find it online by Tom Friend, who at the time was at ESPN.com.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I grew up right down the road in Madisonville by Fairfax in Cincinnati. So we grew up close together down there. But I wanted to tell this story because Eric Schau is still the winningest pitcher in Padre history. And we went on, did a man on the street out at spring training and offered a $25 gift card to fans. Who is the winningest pitcher in Padre history? They guessed Randy Jones. They guessed Peavy. They guessed Hoffman. Finally, I got to give one away.
Somebody finally got Eric Schau.
Yeah. Remember Berman used to call him Eric Win Place and Schau
That's
on
right.
ESPN.
That's right.
And, we're talking with the Padres organization because the family, Eric's widow, his sisters, they'd like Eric to be in the Hall of Fame for the Padres. He's the winningest pitcher, but he's not in the Hall of Fame for the Pods.
Fascinating. We're going to get to all those tentacles. And, of course, we've been talking about it leading up to your appearance here, John, that we've got some sound that nobody's heard before, and you're going to debut it for us here, right here on VSiN By The Books. And obviously when people think of Pete Rose, they're going to think of why is he in the Hall of Fame. We know about Bart Giamatti and the history of that in the 80s. But we do want to take a listen to Pete talking to you about sports betting in modern baseball, in modern sports. So we could, for the first time, you're going to hear it from Pete before his passing on his thoughts on modern-day baseball and gambling.
You understand, you watch ESPN, everything is about gambling. Picking the games after the fifth inning, if you want to rebet, stuff like that. But it was a no-no when I did it. And it was. We live in a gambling society today. I think you'll agree with that. And it's not going to change. It's going to get bigger and bigger. It's not going to get less. And I'm not advocating players that bet on baseball. I know some guys will bet you to Mars, not Saturday, if you give them 2-1. I bet on a duck one time and the son of a drowned. Think about that. That's a bad luck, man.
Only the way Pete can say it, right, John?
He's incredible. And, I needed to get that interview. Otherwise, I don't think we would have had the legs or the sizzle to tell the Eric Schau story. So I get this, and he was fantastic. He wasn't feeling well that day. When we were done with the interview, I said, Pete, if you want to go up to your room, we're in a hotel. I said, feel free. He goes, no, I'd just like to just sit here and relax. His back was bothering him. And we were interviewing Tony Perez down in Miami recently, and he said, boy, Pete went down to Nashville to sign some balls with some of the Big Red Machine at one of those shows, and Tony said, I knew something wasn't right. So he really declined quickly after that interview.
John, when you think about now all the time that's passed and the day and age that we live in, having kind of firsthand knowledge of not only what Eric went through and the story in of itself for him is just unbelievable. I know that's one that you will tell. But everything that Pete had to deal with, and I remember as a youngster growing up in Cincinnati, and that's what you'd hear about, but also just the human aspect of this, having to deal with it day in and day out. What do you take away most from how both those paths eventually collided for what will be one of the most historic moments in our sports history?
Yeah, that's a deep question. It's interesting. It's two people that Pete's not in the Hall of Fame at Cooperstown. Eric's not in the Hall of Fame in San Diego yet. Hopefully he will be at some point. But Pete did a lot of wrong things.
Yes.
Did a lot of things off the field. Lied a long time. I'll never forget it. Before he was banned, I gave him a letter and I said, Pete, when you get in the car or on the airplane, read this. And it said, if you did it, admit it. It's a very forgiving society. You'll be okay. And he took the letter. Whether he read it back then, I don't know. But 2 months later, he was banned. And then he lied all the way through. He lied to Jim Gray on TV. And then he writes a book. And it's like, I did do it. So he made a lot of mistakes. But, when President Trump said he was thinking about he was going to pardon Pete, I liked that. I liked that act of mercy. I like that act of compassion, because statistically, more hits, more winning games, more runs scored. He belongs in the Hall of Fame, and it's going to be a shame that if it happens, it'll be great if it happens. Finally, it's a shame it didn't happen while he was alive.
And that's other parts of this piece that I did want to get to if we could. And this is Pete talking to you about that exact thing, about being put in posthumously. This is from Pete talking to you, John, about that very issue.
I've come to the conclusion, and I hope I'm wrong, that I'll make the Hall of Fame after I die, which I totally disagree with, because the Hall of Fame is for two reasons: your fans and your family. That's what the Hall of Fame is for. Your fans and your family. And it's for your family if you're here. It's for your fans if you're here, not if you're 10 feet under. You understand what I'm saying? What good's it going to do me or my fans if they put me in the Hall of Fame a couple years after I pass away? What's the point? What's the point? Because they'll make money over it? The Hall of Fame is for what you did on the field, not what you did off the field.
Okay, so John, how do we juxtapose that? Because you have Pete in his own words telling you, I don't want to get in after I pass. And now that he has sadly passed, and there is a movement to get Pete in, what do you think the family wants? Because he says it's for the family, it's for him, it's for the family, it's for the fans. Is it still a healing thing if he's put in, even though that would be against Pete's own wishes?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, he should go in. I think his family would love that. I really do. His children, the fans would go crazy. Really, if Pete doesn't go into the Hall of Fame, his biggest night to be remembered is May 14th in Cincinnati, when MLB and the Reds are going to have Pete Rose night. My family's got 50 tickets to go to that game. Everybody's going to get a jersey. But, from up above, wherever, Pete would want to see this happen, and it's going to be the biggest day in Hall of Fame history if he goes in. I mean, Cooperstown will be packed, crazy packed. And, we're giving a baseball away at pardonpete.com. Pardonpete.com. All you're doing is signing a petition asking President Trump to pardon Pete before May 14th. Don't wait any longer. Do it before that big night. So hopefully some folks will go there and sign that petition and get the president to do that.
John, very quickly from me, again, we remember when live news would break in for the Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa home run chase, and we were all there watching it. If Pete were here today, do you feel that he'd still have a change of heart, perhaps, and be like, you know what, our society is the way it is now, but I'm actually happy for what will eventually transpire, and to not forget that Eric Schau on the other side, pitcher hitter dynamics, the beauty of our game.
Yeah, I asked Pete if he could do it differently. Would he do it over again? And I was surprised that his answer in the interview was probably not. Probably not, because I thought I could get away with it.
Do you mind sticking around, John?
Sure.
If you can, Jensen, let's carry this over. Let's come on back, take a quick break, because there's more meat on this bone. Certainly, when we get the man that spoke to Pete Rose before his passing, we got to continue this conversation. So we'll have much more when you come back with us here with John Condit, talking about Pete Rose, Hall of Fame, Eric Schau, a documentary to be released. Come on back. It's VSiN By The Books.
Tuned in to VSiN By The Books, right here on VSiN.
We continue VSiN By The Books. Conversation with John Condit is going to continue here in studio. I want to remind you, coming up here in hour number 3, Lou Finicaro is going to join us off the top to break down UFC Very intriguing fight card this weekend. Jonathan Davis going to join us here in Hour 3 as well with the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. And, of course, we've got the Kentucky Derby. The betting guide is already out. So if you've not become a VSiN Pro subscriber as of yet, you can do so. Again, when you do it today, it's just $9.99 to get your first 30 days of VSiN Pro, and that's going to include that Derby guide, daily best bets, exclusive betting splits, and much more. So sign up now, VSiN.com/subscribe to get access to that Derby guide and everything that comes with it. Again, $9.99 for just the very first 30 days when you become a VSiN Pro subscriber. But John Condit, kind enough to join us here in studio as we're talking about a new documentary that you have on, which really does focus on Eric Schau, of course, who was a legendary pitcher for the San Diego Padres, but he's not in the Padres Hall of Fame, most notably known for giving up the historic hit to Pete Rose. And then you got to have this great conversation with Pete before his passing last year. It kind of, I guess, looking back on it already, I mean, you knew he was in poor health, but getting one of those final interviews with Pete, John, I mean, that in and of itself, you were one of the final people to talk to him about these subjects that people want to know dearly about.
Yeah, definitely the last full-blown sit-down studio interview, which still blows me away that it happened that way. And remember, Eric really didn't want to give up that hit, and he sat down on the mound. Do you remember him sitting down on the mound?
Yes.
That's part of the story. How was that perceived? Why did he sit down on the mound? But the other thing that Eric did before we get back to Pete is, in '87, he ran a fastball up on the Hawk, Andre Dawson, and hit him in the face, which led to a huge brawl at Wrigley Field. Mm-hmm. And Eric wrote a handwritten apology note to Andre Dawson in the clubhouse before he left the stadium.
Wow.
But there's a lot of history around that drama. It ended up being on the front cover of Sports Illustrated. So you really needed Pete's perspective to tell the full Eric story.
So very quickly, he did not. Some guys are like, you go to Traxel's home run against Mark McGwire. Sometimes those moments in history, you almost want to be a part of them, even though you're the foil. Eric did not want that with Pete.
He didn't. That's why he wanted me to sneak him out of the stadium. He didn't want to face the press. I had the only audio interview the night before the hit. Eric was a physics major. He was brilliant. He was a little prideful. And he just didn't want to go down in the history books like Al Downing did, giving up the big hit, the home run to Hank Aaron. And I said, Eric, if it happens, be the first one over there to shake Pete's hand. And he did that. But then the celebration went on for 9 minutes. Pete gave me some great sound. He cries on the field. He talks about that. But Eric finally just took a seat. And so in the documentary, we're talking to Gary Templeton, Bruce Bochy, Chris Welsh, Terry Kennedy. Bochy was behind the dish that night. It's really going to be a great film, hopefully released in September, right at the 40th anniversary. We've not necessarily named it yet, but we're looking for the right partner at some point. Streaming's everywhere.
Sure.
I hope somebody wants to pick this sucker up.
John, and one quick follow-up on, and again, this hits home as a former pitcher. I played right at the end of the steroid era. And also, was in the media when the Astros sign stealing scandal happened. I've been on record. I've told Dave this. I've told our audience. I would much rather pitch in the steroid era because you still got to hit the ball. Knowing what's coming is a completely different competitive advantage. And I've tried to relate it back to the betting side of this, and also, from the human side, like the amount of pressure on those pitchers, knowing that you were just hits away from Pete Rose ascending to the top as the hit king. Can only imagine the mental things on top of what Eric was going through. How deep were you able to get in on where Eric's story was leading up to that, and what he physically and mentally was going through leading up to that moment?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We have his lovely widow, Karamia, on camera for the first time since his death 31 years ago. Two of his sisters, childhood friends, talking about his life. Eric talked about the fact that around 87, 88, the greenies were starting to happen.
Yeah.
People were taking the amphetamines and whatnot. His drug issue started around 89, 90 when he had a back issue and had some back surgery. But it's really interesting because Rose breaks the record in Chicago on September 8th, goes back to the plate. Marge Schott, the owner's pulling her hair out at the Bengals game, watching this, saying, I'm going to kill him if he breaks it there. And if it wasn't for Sean Dunster making a diving stab, Pete breaks the record in Chicago.
Wow.
He sits out Monday, plays Perez because Dravecki's a left-hander. Lamar Hoyt shuts him down on Tuesday. And do you know that Dave Campbell, the color play-by-play for the Padres, predicted in June of '85 that it would be Eric Schau? Because Eric he did. It's going to be in the film. He literally says the night of the hit, I predicted it was going to be Eric Schau back in June. I'm not wishing it. And it's Eric just found his way around some controversy and a lot of big moments in his career.
Yeah, we all make mistakes. Certainly, as you mentioned, John, Pete made his share of mistakes. Let's hear from Pete in his own words again in the conversation he had with you about those mistakes that he made.
When you make a mistake, don't be bitter at other people. I wish I hadn't made the mistake, but I did. It's history. Get over it. I didn't hurt you as a fan. I didn't hurt that gentleman as a fan. I didn't hurt Arnie as a fan. I didn't hurt any of my fans by betting on the game of baseball. And by the way, betting on the game of baseball to win. To win. Okay? I wanted to win every game. Every game I played in, I wanted to win. I happen to win more than anybody else, but that's okay. Not bad.
Okay, therein lies the rub. That I think I don't want to say Pete apologists, for people that are adamant that he should be in the Hall of Fame, it's what Pete said there at the end. Did I bet? Yes, I shouldn't have bet. But I bet on my team to win. I don't think Bart Giamatti back in the day thought there was any difference, right? Betting was betting. It was the rule. You broke the rule. There's no gray area. Is there a gray area? Because it seemed like in Pete's mind, at least, that was the differentiating point of it, that because I bet on my team, it should not be as punitive as just betting in general.
I don't think so. I went into that clubhouse many times, and there was a sign right there as you walked in. You've seen it too. You don't do it. He did wrong. I don't think it matters whether you bet, but I think at the end of the day, I just err on the side of compassion. I think President Trump's talking about that as well. I think most baseball, I think both arguments are defendable. So if someone says Pete should not be in the Hall of Fame, I respect that position. I really do. I tend to be a gray guy, not a black and white guy. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I'd love to see him get in there because of his statistics. But if someone, anyway, I'll leave it at that. I just think he deserves to be in there because of his statistics. I hope President Trump pardons him very soon. And I think May 14th in Cincinnati is going to be an incredible night. But only time will tell. And we know the reinstatement, yes or no question is coming from the commissioner soon.
Yeah, and again, Rob Manfred will be stepping down in 2029, John. So that will be one of those demarcation points of that. Very quickly, my last one for you. It's still wild, and us being in the media, me being on the playing side, and knowing how both sides work. I'm still just mind blown that in '89 there you're standing with a photog taping an interview, and then you get interrupted because the phrase is uttered, hey, you're being investigated by MLB for allegedly betting on baseball. It's still one of the things you cannot wrap your head around how that juxtaposition of emotion is in that moment.
Yeah, that was incredible. I'm 23 years old, and John Browdy, the PR guy for the Reds, interrupts the interview, which never happens. It wasn't live, and just says, I'm sorry to do this, John. I just got to talk to Pete. And Jim Booker and myself can hear him say, you're being investigated by MLB for betting on baseball. I need to tell you that right now.
That is just wild.
It's wild.
And then the other thing, as a young kid, I'm down there, and the next day he's in the dugout, and he's sitting up on the dugout like above, and the entire national press is there, and Pete's kind of like not saying anything. So finally I say, Pete, you don't seem to be taking this very seriously. And as a young sportscaster, that soundbite was used all over the networks that night. That question, Pete, you don't seem to be taking this very seriously. His answer was what was played everywhere in the world that night.
We got to wrap it up here. We got about a minute to go, John. But if you did have what is your lasting message for people when they watch this documentary? What do you want them to take away from it?
So when I talked to his family, I said, look, I want to do a documentary that people watch and say, you know what? Eric Schau was a pretty good guy and a pretty damn good pitcher. And ultimately, I want San Diego Padres to put him in their Hall of Fame. But the story is about baseball, competitiveness, ups and downs, addiction, early death. There's a lot of messages in the story of Eric Schau that is in this, but it's a great baseball story, but it's a great life story.
Fascinating. PardonPete.com?
PardonPete.com. Register to win a baseball. Pete signed for me on September 20th just by going and asking the president to pardon them before May 14th.
We'll be watching May 14th. When you get this movie coming, come on back out and see us, and we'll gladly talk about it again.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Great
John.
to be here. Love you guys. Thank you.
John Condit, fascinating work right there. Cannot wait to see the finished product. It's going to be fantastic. Come on back. Hour number 3 straight ahead. It's VSiN By The Books.